Full disclosure, Hank would not be wearing a jersey normally, but his team is playing, so there's that background for everyone. Okay, so why don't you tell me a little bit about how long you've been a manager and how many people you've managed?
I've been a manager for about 2.5 years, and I've managed 10 people in that time.
And how would your direct reports describe your management style?
Probably very hands-off. I don't like to micromanage because I don't like to be micromanaged, so I'm a big believer in just kind of training someone and that you trust yourself, that you can train them well enough, and obviously they'll still have questions, but that they can kind of handle stuff on your own. I tell people that if you work hard for your people, they'll work hard for you.
Cool. How has your management style changed as you've gained more experience?
Probably learned that it's not every little thing matters. Like when you're coming up, you want to do really well, and it's not that you don't want to do really well when you're a manager. Obviously you do, but you learn to let the little stuff go and you focus on big picture, and you still have to correct when people make mistakes, but it's not the biggest thing in the world if a small thing happens. And kind of along the same lines, kind of when you're unproven as a manager, you kind of want to prove yourself to your people. And so that's kind of an awkward phase, but then once you know and trust your skills as a manager, you kind of grow into the role.
Along this line, if there's one piece of advice you'd give yourself when you first entered management, what would it be?
Probably that stuff is going to happen that's out of your control, and not to let every little thing that happens infuriate you. Just focus on what you can control and just roll with it.
What do you consider your greatest strengths as a manager?
I feel like I'm a very personal person, and I can connect with the people who work for me. Like I've had all my people, well, sounds a little drastic, I've had all my people tell me that if I wasn't their manager, that they probably would have left by now. So to me, that just means that I'm working hard for them, which is, I think, the best thing as I do as a manager.
What are your perceived areas of weakness?
I definitely am sometimes, I guess, too hands off. I don't know if there's a term for it, but there's definitely sometimes where I should kind of step in and help things, but a lot of the time I like to let my people work through it, and I'm definitely there if they need them and to consult off of, but I don't want to be making the decisions for them because then they become reliant on me. But there's definitely times where I feel like I could take a more hands-on approach instead of letting the situation play out that might have been the better course of action.
What are the main strengths you look for in a new employee?
Just someone who's confident, someone who's personable. In the sales that I'm in, it's very important that you're personable and that you're able to talk to people and kind of strike up relationships with people you don't really know. So if you're not talkative and you don't have kind of an energetic energy about you, it's not that you won't be a good employee, you're just probably not, you don't want to do what we're doing. So definitely personable was probably the biggest thing I look for, and then someone who can think fast on their feet. It's hard to kind of get that in an interview, but you can definitely tell the people who are able to react and adjust than if you throw a question out there that catches them off guard and they kind of stumble over it.
What are some red flags or some weaknesses you notice when you're looking at a new employee?
Someone who seems to come in feeling like they're overqualified for the position. Like they come in thinking like, oh, I've done this in my past, or something in their past they've done that they think they can do well, and so they approach it almost as if they're doing you a favor for applying for the job. That would honestly probably be the main thing. Mm-hmm. Confidence is good, but overconfidence can be a killer.
Yeah. Can you think of the best interview with a potential new hire you've ever had and why it was the best? Or if none stick out to you, that's fine too. But
this guy actually didn't end up taking the job we offered him, but this older gentleman who had been I don't know if he was a CEO, but he was very high up in a tech sales company, had gotten out but had been retired and had just gotten bored with it and wanted to get back in. So he came in and interviewed, and he came in even though he had all this in his resume. He was you could tell that he wanted to learn and he wanted to work his way from the ground up, which to me just said a lot. And so he was the willingness to learn and the willingness to be taught was just a very appealing thing.
Nice. What are some of the key metrics to measure good performance?
in sales, you can always, numbers is probably what you say, but just how the market looks. I'm in sales to grocery stores. And so you can tell when you go into a store, even if a rep's numbers are good, you can tell when you go into a store if the displays look nice, if their stuff is pulled up on the shelf, if everything's stocked, who's doing a good job and who's just kind of lazily coming in, taking their order, touching a couple things, and then going out. So really just how the market looks is probably the best judge of things.
You guys stock the stuff yourself?
Sometimes the stores do it, sometimes we do it.
I didn't know that. What are some key metrics to measure underperformance?
Numbers, but then just, you can go into stores and ask the employees, like, hey, like, how's, like, because you have a relationship with the store as well, how's blah blah doing, and if they're like, oh, haven't seen them in a while, or oh, they're in and out, they don't really talk to someone, you can kind of just tell by the people that they work with on a day-to-day basis what they say about them. You can kind of get a good gauge of how much effort they're putting into it.
How do you typically deal with an underperforming employee?
So I like to just, kind of be like, hey, look, I'm going to work with you. We're going to get your sales up. Like, I know you've got usually a lot of the time, or in my experience, a lot of bad performance in the job is honestly because stuff is going on outside the workplace that's affecting them. So you don't want to disrespect someone's personal space, and you don't want to be nosy, but you just want to let them know that, hey, look, I know you've got stuff going on, like, I can help you. Let's get this back on track. If that doesn't work after a time or two, you have to, in my company, you give them you write them up basically, and after you get a couple write-ups, you're put on a 90-day performance program and so on from there. I always tell people they make it a lot harder to fire someone in corporate America than you would think.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about that in class, how
it's like the company's like it's $50,000 for us to like fire an employee and then hire them.
A new one.
Yeah, with all the training and whatnot that goes into it.
So they're like, you better just make it work.
Yeah.
Do you have a reward system for overperforming or good performance for your employees?
So the way that their sales are worked is if they hit certain goals, they can earn bonuses on top of what they're already paid, and they have incentives that if they have a certain performance, you can always reward it that way with money. But I like to take my guys out for like a happy hour or just like some sort of meal with the whole team a couple times a month, just so they can be together, because we're not in the office a lot and around each other. So I think it's good for team camaraderie and for them to just talk to each other about stuff they're going through, because a lot of the time they're all going through similar things, and so it's nice to just talk it out with people. So I do try to do that and reward them with stuff like that.
Nice. What are common ways you see people fail as managers?
To micromanage. I mean, my first manager I had when I was working in Louisville, Kentucky, he was a micromanager, and actually now he doesn't work for our company anymore, just because you stress people. You are so stressed out that you stress people out so much they don't want to work for you, and they'll go and they find something else to do, because I mean it's not worth being miserable in the workplace with every day you feel like you're constantly being told what to do.
Yeah, you spend like 30% of your time at work, so
yeah.
It's miserable. You're not there for very long. How do you tackle these potential pitfalls with your management style? Well, you've already kind of said you like to be hands off and not really micromanage, so I know how. Okay, so if you could pass on any advice to future managers and leaders, what would it be?
I just say more than anything, trust yourself. I know when I first started as a manager a couple years ago, I kind of made myself miserable because I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform and really let the job stress me out, instead of just remembering that it's just work, that you remember that you got that management position for a reason, and that anytime you doubt yourself, you have people to lean on, but just, they wanted you to be there, they hired you, or they promoted you. So just trust yourself, trust what you did before, and if you do that, you should be good.
All right, well, thank you, Hank.